everybody. Welcome back to the Arcane Archive. How are you feeling today, Samuel?
Oh, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling
Oh,
good. I'm ready
yeah.
to I'm ready to get into some stories, read about some unfortunate D&D escapades.
Oh, yes, sir. And by that, you guys got that little spoiler alert. That's right. We're back with another Cautionary Chronicles. It is a beautiful day today, and we're going to go ahead and ruin it just a little bit with this cringe-tastic time for your entertainment. And of course, most importantly, however, your education. After all, we are all here because we want to get together to learn of all these horrible situations and circumstances and talk them through, create a dialogue, a conversation about how some might be able to maybe better navigate these particular obstacles. How maybe we can discuss how these kinds of things even happen in the first place. What is the mindset? What is the overall psychology of these specimens that we are examining in these stories here? But before we get into that in full swing, as always, if you guys like what we're doing here, please be sure to leave a like and a comment down below, like, right down there somewhere or whatever, Tell us what you guys think of these stories we're reading, some of your thoughts and ideas. We love to hear what you guys have to think and say about this. Subscribe and share the channel, as of course, any support like that is always exceedingly appreciated. And we thank you very much for it. But without that being said, also remember to hit that notification bell so you never miss out on all of the new videos coming out every week. But with that being said, finally, let us go ahead and just dive right on in, shall we? Let's dive right on in down into the archive. The first story we have for you today is titled The Tale of Minimus Maximus, the man determined to win at both love and dice, by Tankoman. This is a little extra long, so buckle your seatbelts, everybody. We're about to get a little dirty today. Okay, so this is a story a few years old, as are most of these. I like to have a cool-off period. Sue me. To his defense, now, I'm not sure to what degree this guy was aware of how bad some of his behavior came across. I don't think this necessarily excuses it, of course, but I will note it for context. Hey, we love that. We appreciate that. It's always important in any situation to be able to do your best to showcase empathy, even to the most heinous and disgusting of individuals, if for no other reason than you simply have a better understanding of why they do what they do. So therefore, you are able to exact a more, clear and reasonable punishment for their actions, right? Because some people are just misunderstood, while some absolutely deserve to, have a sword shoved up their ass. It's all a spectrum, as they say, and understanding is the best way to decipher exactly what should be the most reasonable reciprocity. But continuing on. So, Max, as we'll call him, started off kind of amazing. He was a fairly experienced player and came with the concept of a female death domain cleric of the Raven Queen, who was very shy and awkward from being basically raised at a morgue. We'll call this character Minnie. My own character was a paladin of the Raven Queen who devoted his life to her when he thought he was going to die, but didn't. Actually, he was kind of just using his faith as an excuse to exact violence. So, or enact violence, excusez-moi. He was also incredibly gullible and a huge dumbass by design. The third relevant character here is Monk. She was a furball monk, and when we rolled stats, she rolled a 6 and thought it'd be hilarious to put into Constitution. Why? She was also cursed with blindness, and part of her character arc was dealing with her curse. Wow. I personally, I'll never understand how some players just seem to want to have just the most gimped, just screwed character that they possibly can think of, where they're just like, oh, this will be a fun idea. And I will say, most of my experience, whenever I've played with or DM'd a player with a character like that, they usually end up not having a lot of fun. Sometimes they do. It's not all the time. To be fair, there absolutely are some instances where they just give 0 Fs and will just be fine with their character being essentially completely useless, if not maybe detrimental.
Like I
So
look, I get it because it can be fun. I've never done it myself because fuck that.
yeah,
I'd rather just play a competent person, but I get it. I get some people want to have something to fight for right at the beginning. So I guess, There is that.
Or, they treat it kind of like a meme, where it's just
Yeah.
funny, where you just
You know,
fail, or you're
I made
just
a character
like,
that couldn't sleep, and that was their problem.
yeah.
But I used part of the game to do it, so it wasn't a penalty. It was just more of a
It was a
social and
quirk.
role
Yeah.
play
It was a
issue.
personal quirk or flaw. You know what I
And
mean? And the
it
game,
was, yeah, that's how it
yeah.
should be.
Yeah, the game absolutely is great when you have character flaws. It literally, like, kind of not compels you, but incentivizes you to give your character some flaws. And that's what adds, say it with me now, students, nuance. It adds nuance to your characters and therefore adds nuance to the entire story you are collectively telling with your compadres. But obviously, of course, you go too far and it ends up having a detrimental effect. But we know what? We'll see exactly what happens in this situation. So Max actually, so specifically, she was cursed with blindness, and part of her character arc was dealing with her curse. So Max actually started off super amazing. He was actually really good at playing the shy, awkward cleric, and Monk formed a bond with Minnie as they supported each other, and it was actually very sweet. Mechanically, he was very good at being a cleric and worked very well with keeping the party alive and buffed. In contrast to the Sir Eric from my previous stories, who devoted all his resources to supporting the female players at the expense of everyone else, this guy was genuinely good. He was a min-maxer, to be sure. Hey, nothing wrong with that, all right? Min-maxers rise up. True min-maxers rise up, all right? We got the poser maxers, not the real maxers, okay? Put some respect on the name. Right there. See, right there. You see that? Right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. See that? That's real. But point being was he was playing support and it just made the party better. He was so good, in fact, that it took a bit of time to notice the exact nature of Minnie's behavior with Monk. During that time, me and Monk were playing in another campaign, and we were portraying a cowardly charlatan, moi, and his sworn bodyguard, a badass orc fighter, which was Monk's character. Now, in this game, she was smart and competent and a total beast. When two players dropped out suddenly right before a boss fight, the GM suggested bringing Max in as a guest player, and we were in. Then Max introduced the absolutely most annoying character in the world. He was a storm sorcerer. Buddy. See? Ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Okay. Well, either way, he was supposedly some sort of country bumpkin type thing. Dumb and good-natured, But he seemed weirdly both flirty and aggressive. It was a very odd vibe and a bit surprising given the way his other character acted. Well, I mean, I personally I'd say in that regard, like I don't see anything wrong with that. Like it's actually can be a lot of fun a lot of times to like drastically switch up your character's personalities from character to character. You play one who might be a little bit more shy, reserved, and quiet and low key, and then obviously the next one is much more verbose and extroverted and interactive and colorful. It's nice, it's refreshing. But this does seem to be more problematic than that. After a bit of bickering with Monk's character, he got insistent on dueling her, which seemed kind of out of character as well. Like, it just didn't seem very normal for the way that the character was. I don't know. He was so insistent, in fact, that he ended up demanding the GM just set up a map for them outside sessions so that they could do it on their own. Now, because he was both ranged and could sort of fly, he obviously ended up winning handily by kiting. This rubbed me the wrong way. See, out of character, I get. He was very excited about his build and wanted to show it off. But in character, look, we were a group of pretty good players. If we actually challenged the fighter to fights, we could probably all win 50% of the time. But in character, the character's whole thing was that she was a badass. And then a random character suddenly coming in out of nowhere to beat her up seemed real poor choice to me. Like, sure, you can claim, and he did, that if the mechanics allowed it and it happened, we should just accept it, and she should RP not being as tough as she thought that she was. But I don't know. It felt like the wrong way to go about it with the character. Now, okay, right away, what do you think of that, Sam, before we continue?
I mean, it's weird. The whole vibe of this is strange. Bringing in, because essentially this person is like bringing in a character to just disrupt everything.
Mm.
And
Like,
doing it just seems like a very strange choice.
yeah. Like it's
I
definitely
can't.
like I mean, I I could maybe understand a little bit more because he's played with both of these players in another campaign for a while, and maybe they're more comfortable. And so I could see it kind of maybe from that perspective of like if you're more familiar with a group and some party or some members and you come in, like it could really kind of throw in, a whole kind of haymaker or a needle, it'll completely kind of switch up the thing. Although what I will say is I think they are kind of at least I don't know if they're towards the end of the campaign, but they are at kind of a really big narrative moment. But another thing I will say too is like I don't necessarily think that, the fighter being a badass changes just because she was beaten by a magical fucking, a literal individual who is suffused with magic in their very essence. You know what I mean? Magic is pretty intrinsically and inherently unfair. You know what I mean? It's not really fair. And depending on what level you are, yeah, most likely the fighter might not be able to beat like, a higher level sorcerer, right? Although it's
That's a
still
big
possible.
maybe,
It's
though.
it's still yeah, it's still highly possible. It really depends on your build and the items that both players slash characters
Yeah,
have,
I mean,
right?
what kind of do you have any access to range? Because that'll fuck up a lot of
That's
things.
what I was gonna say.
Do
Like
you have a
technically
way to
speaking,
fly? Because that'll fuck up a lot
like
of things.
I assume based off of what OP was saying that the sorcerer could sort of fly. I believe he's referring probably to his storm movement or whatever, where it's like he had the storm sorcerer even at lower levels has the ability like when they cast like a leveled spell they can like momentarily in that same movement like as a bonus action I think move like fly 10 feet in any direction. Um, which it doesn't incur like opportunity attacks or whatever. I played a Storm Sorcerer before, um, and they are cool, but much better at higher level. So depending on what level it was, if there was like a low level, like you guys were still low level, um, a sorcerer with that kind of movement and depending on the specific terrain and environment, yeah, like again, he said that he won by kiting, which I don't really know why the
Not, I mean,
fighter wouldn't have like, bows or javelins or any kind of range. It may also just be specifically that based off what OP says here too, that maybe the player herself just isn't as strategic or as capable in combat like herself specifically maybe which is why he's saying like if we all tried we could probably win at least 50% of the time but that's still like half and half so it's not really much but anyway like yeah this definitely feels kind of strange right off the bat. Anywho, let's
yeah.
continue. Still, that's just me being petty. Whatever. When GM asked if we wanted to keep him permanently, the answer was no. We did not like the character. Also, that began to make me realize that what his other character was kind of about, and I just could not unsee it. That sentence was kind of strange. His whole RP seemed dedicated to initiating a romance between Minnie and Monk, and slowly and subtly, she'd just get more and more jealous and possessive as it became clear Monk just really wasn't into it. She'd send her familiar to quote unquote guard Monk. She'd try running off to do stuff to resolve Monk's entire character conflict without her. It was just kind of really intense and weird. Then I talked to Monk out of character and asked what she wanted to do about it. She said not to make a big stink out of character, but that she'd appreciate me doing some clam jamming in character. Boy, you certainly do not hear a term like clam jamming too often. Which was easily done
Ew.
since my character was a huge dumbass anyway, and him and Monk had formed a friendship. It is in this context that the following series of events takes place. Honestly, I guess, you do have, whole C blocking, and so it's like, I guess you also kind of need uh, an alternative to when it's women instead of just males. Which you know what I appreciate. Equality. It's always great. Uh, First, we were headed for a session where three players couldn't make it, so it would just be me, Monk, and Max. We were right before a huge plot thing and decided we'd just hang around the outpost we were in doing RP bullshit. Minnie suggested Truth or Dare with Monk alone. It was not subtle. We, with plan Clam Jam firmly in place, Monk misunderstood and invited my character, which if she hadn't, we'd have an hour of them playing Truth or Dare while I just, I don't know, sat there. The game ended up being kind of fun, but Max and Minnie in character were clearly unhappy. Second, when Monk met an NPC she wanted a romance with, my character was wing-manning the hell out of that. Minnie was unhappy. Third, we were doing a prison break or something. As we were trying to get away, a giant red dragon was standing in our way. It demanded we kneel. My character, and what I thought was a fun character moment, decided to kneel and placate the dragon to not endanger his friends and buy the rescue ship time to arrive. Fourth, when my character and Monk were having a private character moment after a huge character conflict, as she promised a different character he wouldn't be harmed, but my character ended up killing him anyway. And Max had Minnie try and insert herself into that situation, gloating about how we wouldn't be able to get away from her because of how high her perception was. Fifth, we are introduced to a magical child NPC. Monk and my character bond with her, and Minnie seems to aggressively dislike her for presumably taking so much of Monk's attention. It was following that Max reached out to me out of character. Say, how much HP does your character have? I want to plan my healing spell slots accordingly. So I tell him, because, why wouldn't I? The next session, Minnie asks my character privately into her room to discuss strategy. My character, gullible as ever, comes along without a fuss. She then goes, would you please willingly fail this save? I want to try something. Now, paladins, if you're in the know at all, rarely fail saves because of their aura buffs. This is true. I go, sure. The spell ends up being Hold Person. Yeah. Once my character is paralyzed, hers does her channel divinity, which makes a character take double damage and proceeds to upcast, inflict wounds. Now let's just take a moment here. Acolytes, apprentices, if you have done any of your due diligence in all of our classes up to this point, you guys should be very aware of just how powerful the spell Inflict Wounds is, even at its most basic level. This spell is pretty intrinsically broken, although I think they did kind of do something about that in 5.5 now, right? They nerfed Inflict Wounds, as I recall, in 5.5.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day, though, it was pretty nutter butters. It was, what is it? It was a second level spell.
It
right?
was. I think it was a second. It was
no. Was it first? I think it was a first level spell.
It was a first level
because it was
spell
the
that-
opposite
it was
of Cure Wounds.
It was a first level spell that was touch. It was a spell attack roll,
Yep.
and it did 3d10 necrotic damage on hit.
Just baseline. That's just that base, and then you could upcast it.
You could upcast it. It would give you an extra d10 per level. It was wonky. It was
a lot because
like you had to be up close and personal, so it had to be the right cleric. Because if you're playing a cleric that didn't have heavy armor, it was more difficult to get off. But if you could get up close, survive, and touch people with that fucking spell, you could do some insane damage.
Especially if
because you could crit.
Yes, I was gonna say, especially if like in this scenario, you are able to crit with the spell, which guarantees double damage on top of the fact that his cleric that he's playing has a channel divinity, which allows him to instantly inflict double the damage again on a target of his choice. Bing, bang, boom, you do the math. Not sure exactly what level he upcasted at, but needless to say, I'm sure he, at this level, had enough spell slots to do so. So essentially, this attack OHKOs my character. For those of you who might not be as familiar with the vernacular, one hit KO. This attack one-hit KOs my character since it's an automatic crit because he's paralyzed. See, another thing you have to all pay attention here. Like, if nothing else, students, just pay attention. I mean, this is just, if we're talking just objectively, mechanically speaking, this is quite the phenomenal play by that guy douchebag here in terms of being able to stack multiple different buffs, abilities, and powers. He is truly, despite my bitterness and acknowledging, I begrudgingly do so, he, I guess, can indeed have the title of min-maxer, but he's a douchey min-maxer. He's using his powers for evil, okay? We're not all like him, all right? Don't put us all in the same boat here. He's just using his powers for selfish and evil, okay? What is the term? Don't paint us all with the same brush. But point being is, it's an automatic crit, and we had a max damage crit house rule on top of that. Jesus. So I barely avoided dying instantly. Minnie then proceeds to stabilize, undress, and tie my character to the bed. Kinky. See, this is why he needed to know my HP. He needed to plan this one-hit KO out of character. I'm confused and kind of angry by this point, so this seems like sort of an attempt to assert dominance by demonstrating what huge damage he can do. Well, maybe, but he also did it through incredibly unscrupulous and manipulative means. Like this, he literally had to set all of this up perfectly to even get there. This is not like necessary to happen if you were truly on guard and fighting each other. So this doesn't actually necessarily assert dominance because everything needed to be exactly as he needed it to be to get there. But anyway, Minnie proceeds to tell my character that kneeling before the dragon was disrespectful to the Raven Queen, and that next time she will kill him. I, wanting to avoid a that's what my character would do moment and getting insta-killed, instead have my summoned steed drag our party over. We call her out on this BS, and Max has Minnie justify it once again. But I'm thinking this has more to do with Operation Clam Jam than anything else. But, hey, we'll never know, I guess. Now, because at about that time, Max decided to join a second campaign run by GM. When GM asked for a character, he produced some sort of Aasimar, sorcerer, cleric, paladin abomination. That was so busted, he had to veto like 2 versions of it. And once it appeared, it was dedicated to seducing the female players at that table by being better than her at healing and also having great damage and being the bestest, most impressive thing ever GM, or bestest thing ever. And GM was just done. Between that and the shit he pulled with my character, he was at this point asked to leave all the games they were a part of and be removed from the server effective immediately. And thus ended his master plan to win at both D&D and seduction. Obviously, we should have probably raised the issue out of character earlier, but we were kind of new to D&D as a whole, and he was a deceptively good player initially before what I think is his resentment set in. Lesson learned, I guess. End post. Okie dokie. Well, first off, what are your overall just thoughts, critiques, comments on this one, Samuel?
I love the seducer angle. It's probably my favorite bit.
Who doesn't love a good seducer?
That always works every time.
A debonair rogue, the Captain Jack Sparrow.
Oh no! You're misunderstanding. I'm talking about people that think they can be.
Yes, I know.
Because those are caricatures for a reason. And not to say that someone who plays D&D in their spare time, or maybe in a lot of their spare time, couldn't also be a charismatic seducer type person, but usually that comes with
not impossible. Hell, look at Joe Manganiello,
Yeah, but he's not a seducer.
No, he's
Joe Manganiello doesn't have to try. He can walk into a room and be like, "Hey guys," and then everyone wants to be his friend, except his ex-wife. But the reality is a seducer, like the character that you think of, one doesn't really exist in the traditional sense, but also has so many other facets than just being good at that one thing.
Yes.
Because being an empty charismatic fool, you need other things to go along with it. Whether you're actually just batshit crazy, and you have those kinds of characters that are, they are charismatic and seductive in a way, but they're also just nuts. Or they have other things, like they're capable in some way. This person is not that. Because they are trying to push that into a D&D game with their friends, which is weird.
Well,
it's just weird and combative, and I don't.
Tis a little bit strange for sure. Tis a little bit strange.
A little bit strange.
But here's the thing, right? I think...
How strange is it?
It's a tad bit awkward, really. Tad bit awkward. But here's the thing, and one thing that I did appreciate about OP especially is that the OP does seem to be trying to give, at least a little bit of grace to this guy in terms of, they may have not have actually been as bad as a lot of the other, specimens that we observe in these stories, right? Because apparently, like OP absolutely gives them credit in terms of they were phenomenal in terms of both role play as well as they are clearly well versed and skillful at utilizing the mechanics of the game as a whole. But it clearly seems like perhaps their personal mental and emotional state was less than min-maxed overall, considering they clearly seem to get maybe a bit of an unhealthy attachment to both the female player in their game as well as the other games. And eventually, I guess, and we never know exactly what's going on out of character, right? In someone's life, someone could be going through some shit. Doesn't excuse their behavior to other people necessarily, right? But it is still something that should be considered reasonably, like we say, right? If you're going to judge anybody and if you want to punish anybody, it is imperative, absolutely imperative and vital to at least have all of the facts and information clear and straight as they can be, right? Because, there are a lot of extenuating circumstances. Again, does not, at least in my opinion, it does not excuse the way this guy was acting here. He was just being an asshole by the end of it. He started out really great and amazing, and as time went on, when he just wasn't necessarily getting maybe the things that he wanted or expected to, he started lashing out in a very childish and immature manner. And
No,
that
God forbid.
is not okay. I know. Shocker, everybody, right? Shocker. But regardless, I do think, to be fair, I think OP and the rest did handle it relatively well, right? They gave him chances. They gave, I usually have like a 2, maybe like 3 strike rule, depending, right? Until something becomes more of a habit or behavior rather than an exception, right? It's like, if nobody's perfect, people can make mistakes, people can have those moments and that time. Like, again, you need to be able to give people a little bit of grace in that way. But once it starts becoming a repetitive thing or a reoccurring issue, it's no longer the exception. It now becomes more so the rule, and that's not acceptable. So, quite frankly, my hat's off to you, OP. If you ever see this video, I think you guys handled it very nicely. I mean, you probably should have brought it, to be fair, you probably should have brought it out of character a little bit sooner. I do fucking love the whole Operation Clam Jam gag and joke. That is freaking hilarious, especially because just the term clam jam is freaking hilarious.
I
But
hate it.
it gives you that little scribbly feeling. It's very cringe, but we love that because it's entertaining
Like,
too.
I hate just the word clam jam.
It's like moist for some people. It's
Moist
like
is moist is fine. Clam
well, see, that's
jam
the thing.
is terrible.
For some people, moist is their clam jam, which I don't
Are you trying to
understand.
tell me that someone's clam jam is their moist? Wait,
Yep.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. You saw it there? Yeah, you saw it there. Yeah. The word
Not
moist.
a moist clam jam. This is terrible. Everything's gone wrong.
Okay, all right. Let's before we go down that rabbit hole, let's go ahead and move on to the next story of the day.
What do
I'd
you
say
mean?
nope.
You
Thank
don't
you
want to
guys.
talk about it with me?
Thank you guys so much for reading the tale of Minimus Maximus with us. Let's move on to the next one of the day. Sam, take it away, buddy.
I've the urge to change my name to other
Moist
words.
Clam jam.
My moist clam jam.
We might get even more like demonetized. We probably already will be if we actually had any monetization to begin with. But
I don't
either
think
way,
we do.
no, we
Not
do
at all.
not yet. Maybe someday though.
Well, I have a slightly more appropriate story with less clams or
But
jamming.
only slightly. Only slightly.
This is more of a, I think, just an attempt to appease the rage within. By Smart Like 13, DM lost in the sauce ignores other players for hours. Now, the beginning of this has a very long edit, which I think keys into what this story is going to be about very well. Edit. All right, somewhere along this post, I must have miscommunicated.
No, no.
I want to emphasize all of us players have been enjoying exploring the ship. We were all interacting with things, taking hooks, etc. The wizard PC happened to take this hook that the rest weren't interested in, and the DM dragged it along for 2 whole hours on the first session, and then the second session as well. The rest of our characters were literally asleep. I cannot emphasize enough, I wanted to play the damn game and explore the rest of the ship, and I was unable to because the DM locked in on this one PC. In what world is this normal and enjoyable gameplay? Why is this somehow being spun as if I did something wrong? I wanted to engage with the game and could not. I, along with the entire rest of the party, chose not to take one single hook in what was a bait shop full of hooks. But fuck me for not being interested in this specific hook. And I and the rest of the group, I and the rest of the group deserve to sit for 2 hours unable to play the game. That definitely makes sense. This sub I thought was a place to share stories about terrible D&D experiences. For me, this was a terrible experience 2 times in a row. I also thought sharing here was telling the story that happened, not a defense, not a defense of a dissertation. A lot of commenters have seemed to read the whole post seeking any sign that I did something wrong. I implore you to try and first read it with the assumption that I am telling the truth and that I did try to engage and that the DM was in the wrong. Please, I promise, I wanted to play the damn game. That's why this frustrated me so much.
Fair enough. You know what? To that point, or you know what, OP? Yes, I
That's why I
do.
picked this. It's because the first bit I was like, damn, dude.
Yes, like he came ready. Like that.
He
You know
came.
what? I respect it. I respect. He
Come.
came. He
Yeah,
came. He definitely came. Like, probably like that moist clam jam.
Oh, you did that. I didn't make it. I didn't
Hey,
do it. It was
you
you.
set it up, all right? I just knock him down, all right? Hey, you set it up, I knock it out. That's how
Look
this
at me.
works.
I'm so bad at basketball I can't throw an alley oop at him.
Hey,
That's
that's how
not
this works.
happening.
Nah, but we played bowling before, but hey, you set those pins up. I just knocked him down. That's it. That's it. Point being is, smart Alec, you know what? I respect and appreciate that because I definitely feel like a lot of people in just general and many aspects of life, y'all, we really should do our best to think the best of each other as much as we can until given a legitimate reason not to.
It's
Okay?
wild you feel that way. I don't agree, but I
I
like the
mean,
gumption of this post.
look, I'm not
The edit of this
saying
post. The funny thing is, I read this story already. I fully believe that this happened the way he said it did. The reason I picked this wasn't because I didn't think he was an asshole,
oh,
but the
absolutely.
gumption alone to put that out and be like, I thought this was America. Like it was the Stan Marsh in South Park getting beat up at the baseball game and then arrested for public intoxication. I thought this was America. Like this is what we're meant to do here. And I kind of agree. Like this isn't a bad story. It's not that like deep. It is a frustrated player talking about
Yeah,
something that happened. And I
yeah.
don't think it was the funny thing is like let's just read it because the dude
Yes,
gives the
yeah.
guy props
Like,
throughout the story as
no,
well.
that's what I'm saying. It's like just give it again. We just said give it a little bit of grace. All right,
Yeah,
read through it and don't automatically
I
assume
think
the worst right off the
this
bat.
poor
Like,
man has earned a bit of grace.
agreed. Like
Um,
that's all I'm saying. Just let's give each other a little bit more grace, please. And I don't get me wrong. I know vast amount of people just at this point with all the things
oh,
we've
we've
experienced.
read so many stories that like a lot of times it is the person posting the story is either
Yeah.
part
It's
of the problem,
questionable. It's
half the problem, or the
questionable.
whole damn problem. I don't think
Yes,
this isn't
yes.
one of those.
It is exceedingly
But let's get
questionable a
into
lot
it,
of the time.
and Adam, you tell me by the end, or interject whenever you'd like how you feel where this lies on our scale of you are the problem to fuck that other guy.
Very well. I will
Um,
lock the fuck in, as they say.
yeah,
Let's do this, buddy. Hit
yeah,
us
yeah.
with it.
This
Get
happened
us your
like
best
five.
narrator voice.
This happened like 5 years ago now, and is one of my top most frustrating and hurtful things to happen to me in D&D. I was in a game with what I thought was the best DM I'd ever played with. He had a detailed world, a wide range of NPCs and personalities, fun tactical combat. I played for like 2 to 3 years with this group. One weakness he had, though, is he loved doing mini campaigns. We would usually have different characters for these. Sometimes they tied in directly to the main campaign, sometimes they didn't. One here or one here, one there is good fun, and it's a great break from the main campaign, but it clearly became a way for him to avoid prepping the main game and a way to explore the world from different angles. His true flaw is he sometimes got lost in the sauce. Not
Don't
to
we
say he
all?
was drunk, but he would get sucked into ranting about his world lore, or get really focused on a side scene, or kept a joke running for too long. He would lose perspective of the table and the game. Again, at times this meant getting to hear cool stories and juicy deep lore, but it also turned into a pattern and a problem. During a mini campaign, which had all new characters teaming up with one of our characters, or one of the old characters, my main story character to be exact, The main story needed a job done, a trip deep into the Underdark, and our characters were going to be the ones to do it. Cut to us miles below the ground, sailing an underground sea. We find a huge wrecked ship that's at the heart of the story, but otherwise is a step that's
Is a
yeah,
stepping
otherwise a
stone
stepping stone
objective.
objective for us. This thing has dozens of rooms. The DM had designed it as a large multi-session dungeon. That's a cool dungeon. Shipwreck, that's a cool
Yeah, no,
dungeon.
I mean, all of this is quite like,
I fucks with it.
we'll put a pause in a second. Like again, even the whole concept, at least initially, of the GM wanting to do like mini campaigns to tie into inside the same world and maybe even connect to the main campaign. I think all of that is really awesome. I love that concept. It also, for certain characters or even the players, could offer them a chance at keeping, the game fresh for them, right? It gives them the opportunity to play a different character with a different class specifically, something lighter or whatever. Like, I don't think that's initially a bad idea in the slightest. But from what OP is saying, I absolutely can see how it can start to kind of devolve and degrade depending if he becomes, like he said, it starts to become a crutch rather than a truly complementary or improving quality. Please continue though, Sammy.
Yeah. The session started. We began to explore for a bit, and we decided to split up the party to cover more ground since we were trying to find something specific in the ship. It's common for this group to split the party, and the DM often used it as a method to create conflict/tension. While exploring, one player pushed a button and discovered something, but aside from that PC, no one else at the table had interest in this reveal. I was the only one nearby, saw it was wizardly stuff, and decided to go find a different PC to explore a different room, leaving just the wizard in this room. I emphasize here as an edit that we all wanted to explore the ship and engage with the game. None of us knew that this room would lead to two more rooms stuffed with lore. The next 2 hours, no exaggeration, was entirely the DM and the one PC RPing exploring this chamber and the next, rolling knowledge checks, investigation checks, perception checks, etc. The rest of us figured he would end at some point, but each bit led to the next. It was only like 3 rooms total, but took forever because the wizard kept asking for knowledge checks and the DM kept sprouting lore and on and on. I'm adding this edit here to the rest of us players did want to play. We wanted to explore the ship, engage with the game, and after the first 20-30 minutes, I asked, hey, can I and PC explore that other room I mentioned? We were told to wait until the wizard was done. The 3 to 4 session ended with most of us only getting a half hour to an hour playtime. I was frustrated about it, but decided, hey, it's just one bad night. Cut to the next session. The exact same fucking thing happens. But even worse, this time none of us are able to really interject because the scene was happening while the rest of us were sleeping. At one point, I left the table and went to just chill in the bathroom. Came back like 20 minutes later and no progress had been made. They were still going at it. I had another edit. I did ask during these 2 hours to play the game, but since my character was sleeping, like the entire party, I had no reason to know. DM said as much, and that was the truth, but man, it sucked sitting there waiting. At no point did the DM or the wizard gain the awareness they were the only two talking for 2 hours. Again, I am not exaggerating because I tracked the time. It was over 2 hours solid of this interaction. I was pissed. Some of the other players seemed frustrated, but they were always the more passive style, so they just cruised along. I sent a message to the DM after the session, tried to be level-headed, expressed that I've been having a great time overall, and he has a great world, and that I DM and understand it's exciting to have someone fully pressing the buttons and pulling the strings on the lore web. But these past 2 sessions were not fun at all, since I spent over 4 of the 7 hours doing literally nothing. I really poured my heart out. His response? Nah, I get it. No elaboration, no discussion of trying to improve anything. No, shoot, I'm sorry. No attempts to make it feel like he actually cared whether or not I stayed or left. So I left the campaign. To me, that's the worst part of it. I thought we were friends. We didn't always see eye to eye as fellow DMs, but I had been playing with the group for years, and this was his response? He had completely lost sight of the rest of the table in the game, and when the issue was brought up, he gave the equivalent of a shrug. I lost so much respect for him in that moment. Edit. Maybe I didn't make it clear. Many of us were interested in exploring the ship and learning about the world lore, and interacting with what the DM had made. It's that one specific chamber had reveals that, due to their nature, were only interesting to the wizard PC. And again, I must emphasize, the second session this happened, all our characters were asleep for the entire 2 hours of RP. How the hell am I meant to engage with the DM's world when my character is asleep? Oh,
Okay, so end post.
I will say there is, you know, the reiterating over and over again what they wanted. This all could have been solved by doing one very simple thing.
Yes, clearly.
Cutaways.
Yes, just
Cutaways.
eat like this. I
Cutaways. 30-minute cutaways.
right away, I would say that this whole thing, yes, is 100% the GM's fault. This is what I'm saying. Like, I don't really understand how anybody reading this could make the assumption of like, well, did you say like, did you like, it's like, sure, you can ask just for clarification. Like, okay, yes, OP, what did you do? Did you express any discomfort, dislike, whatever? Clearly, OP did. Maybe they had to edit that from the original story. Maybe that wasn't in the original story that they actually had said anything. But regardless, it is still absolutely 100% the GM's job to maintain engagement, stimulation, and interest from everybody at the table. Literally, they are the moderator. That is the point. That is their job. Like, literally. You cannot just sit there with 1 or 2 players for freaking 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, especially if your game is only like, what, 4 or 5 hours max, maybe? Like, you gotta, like, again, the whole point is you want everybody to try and be as invested and involved as possible. You gotta bring them in. So yes, like Sam just said, easiest tool ever. You take a cutaway. You're just like, so you saw, you leave the wizard with like a particularly like, interesting or like maybe big kind of like cliffhanger kind of thing. You're like, and we'll get back to you in just a second. We're going to move over to the next group or whatever, right? That also gives the wizard time to just digest what they just received, to work through it, maybe come up with some responses or questions or whatever in the meantime. And you're not leaving the rest of your players sitting there doing fucking nothing, just twiddling their thumbs or whatever the hell, bro. Like, come on. This is 100% a huge fail on the GM's part. And I can definitely see that, like, when OP expresses themselves fully, straight up, and the GM just basically goes like, nah, I get it, that probably doesn't feel fucking great either. That feels pretty shitty. Especially after all the time that they've put in and the respect that they've given and everything. Yeah, that sucks. Let's let's see again. Let's see some of these comments down here real quick. Since this is such a freaking huge thing. Well, luckily, top voted comment seems to just be, this is where the GM should have had cutscenes with the remainder of the party and switch between them. Literally, what we said. Like that literally would have just solved all the problems, basically. Comment right below that says, this reminds me of one session where our PC was having a leisurely day on the town while unbeknownst to her, the other PC was having an epic solo adventure. I wasn't feeling frustrated or left out because every so often we cut back to my character and I got to describe what she was doing, and the contrast was hilarious. See? That's cool too, right? Where it's just like, oh, hey, yeah, her PC isn't necessarily having, the same in-depth, involved kind of like, she's just having a chill time. But she's still at least being highlighted. She's being given that time to showcase what's happening. She gets to play a little bit. And it is absolutely hilarious if, like, in contrast, like, she's just going like, la, 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 la. And then you immediately cut back to, like, the fighter of the rogue going like, oh! Like, fighting for their life. And so that goes to show you don't necessarily need to have everybody having the same level or intensity of stakes, right? You don't have to have the same layer or level of like involvement or attachment or relevance per se, but you do still need to give everybody as much as you possibly can an equal amount of spotlight, attention, and focus, right? Unless even when it's like, say you're in a particular arc of the story and it's following one particular character's backstory, right? This particular adventure or mission they're on, their quest that they're on, is more so intrinsically tied to one specific party member, and they're going to get a little bit more spotlight. Even with that, you still got to make sure to try to include the other players. That is just what the game is. What do you think, buddy?
I mean, here's the thing that gets me. So on one hand, you could make the argument that like if this guy is putting all this effort into this world, and you all you do is praise and praise all the effort and whatever. How is the wizard character the only character that gives a shit about this? Now, because I could also say that like if you've been playing with a table for 2 to 3 years, even the characters that don't necessarily have a direct connection to someone else's lore would still be interested in it. That's their friend, that's their comrade, their party member. You're telling me no one else in this group has a dice to throw, a skill to offer, an opinion to add to this conversation? Second, why are you guys like who the fuck put him to sleep? So the wizard's off doing this and no one just goes and checks? You just go to bed? Like and this is me as a from a player's perspective of like, did you ask to do that? Did you go in there and check on him? Because like no offense, if the DM's so focused, I'd be like, can we join him?
Yeah, can we just like if he's been in there for literally hours, like we would
Like
probably
something's
go
up,
and
obviously. Like
we would probably
if he
go and
hasn't
check on him much earlier than just
if he
hours.
hasn't come
Like
out of that room in 30 minutes, or leave a friend in a room for 30 minutes and they just don't come
or I
out.
would even 20, like in this
Are you
kind
fucking
of
kidding
like,
me?
yeah, like this undead
There's
wreck of a ship, like
there's
absolutely not.
obviously something going on.
Yeah.
And that's me to say like it's very well it could be very well possible that this DM was asked these things and just didn't care.
And that's well
And
again based off of what OP is saying, where it's just like if the GM keeps saying, wait until me and Wizard are finished, that's a problem. That's not what the GM should be saying, unless of course this person like interjects and it's only been like 2 minutes, right? It's been like a couple seconds. And they're like, oh, can we do something over here? It's like, okay, yeah, hang on, just we're gonna finish with this real quick, and then we'll go over to you, right? Then sure. But if you've literally been sitting there for like 10 minutes, 10 to 20, 30, and obviously even longer, but I would say at maximum, you've been focused on a person for 10 minutes, that's too long, right? Switch over a little bit. Yeah, give them some time. Like I said, we've seen that kind of thing happen all the time in like Critical Role, Adventure Zone, even Dimension 20, where if the party is split up and they're doing separate things, the GMs will hit them with some nice stuff, give them a little bit of time, and then when it's like a nice little cliffhanger moment, they'll be like, and now we're gonna switch over to you real quick, right? It's fun. It keeps people engaged. It keeps them involved, kind of at the edge of their seats, like, oh, right, because they want to see the rest of it. But then you also are able to then keep the other players from feeling bored and completely and utterly detached and disregarded and neglected. That is the big word, neglected.
yeah.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Like the fact clearly the GM got just really into just, and OP even says so in the post, right? Where they're just like, look, I'm a GM too. So I completely understand and I get how awesome it feels when a player starts to really pull on those like narrative lore strings so you can just kind of unravel the story for them and just kind of like, you can just show all of it to them and stuff and like, I get it. It's fun. It is awesome. But you also why incorporate some of the other players in that too? Why is it just the one player? Incorporate the others in some way, right? Why can't you make it so like, oh, the wizard found maybe part of that, right? And then in another
Yeah.
room somewhere else, the other players find the rest of it. And OP says, like, the due to the nature of what was being unveiled, only the wizard found it interesting. But even then, even again, like I said, even if that was the case, even if your intention was to highlight the wizard's backstory and stuff, you still could have incorporated the other players by again having them find pieces of it themselves and then bringing the wizard in with them, right? There's all manner of ways you could have gone about that were infinitely better than what was done here. You just clearly straight up neglected the rest of your party. It's just the truth. And when they said something about it, you kind of either shut them down or you kind of just gave a real detached, non-committal response, which does suck. I don't know if I necessarily agree with OP like leaving because of it. It does feel maybe just a little bit petty or overly like sensitive to just quit out of a campaign that you have been playing for, I think what years or something. I think that he said. At this point, we're just like you maybe could have had more of a conversation or even more of a conversation with the rest of the party too, right? About like, hey, this needs to change. Or and I get it. After his response or whatever, you felt even further and more completely neglected and disregarded, and you were just kind of done with it. So,
Like,
I
yeah,
understand.
I'm. What I will say is, like, I feel like there must be more going on before this moment for you to just be like, I'm done. Um,
Yeah, at least I feel that way. I think I agree. I don't know. It just seemed like a rather extreme response to, okay, yeah, you had two bad sessions. But by what you're saying, you apparently had a lot of really great other sessions too, though. So I mean, like, I don't understand why you dipped out just because yeah. Either way, anything else you got on this one, buddy?
no, I
All
think
right,
that
let's go ahead and move on to the next one then. This story is titled "Kicked Problem Player Hacks Our Discords, Causes Chaos" by Own Worldliness 5030. Now, for transparency's sake, I am writing this on a burner account as the parties involved have proven more than happy to strike at critique and such. This story is still pretty fresh in the mind of me and some of my players, and I apologize if it's not the best written or the most concise, as I am better with the spoken word as opposed to the typed. You are given this grace, my friend. People of note, all names are swapped to keep identities hidden. Me, the long-standing perma GM. Bitsy, a player who had the best of intentions but winds up letting in the doom of our game. Spider, or otherwise known as Spider, the problem player for this little ordeal, an absolutely impossible person to deal with. There were other players involved, but honestly, they aren't the focus. For context, I was feeling the age-old itch to start a new game after seeing some fresh inspiration. I had gotten deep into the recent musical Epic. Ooh, I also have actually just recently kind of gotten into Epic a bit now after someone introduced me to it. And it's pretty cool. And the Paris musical from the 90s slash early 2000s. I was really riding the Greek myth high and wanted to run something of the like, and as a result, I picked up the Odyssey of the Dragon Lords module. It's a stellar third-party book with a usually awesome community behind it, and I wholeheartedly recommend it. Well, none of my usual stable of players could make it for the day I had free, so I had to brave the dungeons of Roll20, Reddit, and Discord group finders. But I was able to find some pretty good folk. But we were still so short. I like running tables of 6 players. It just works best for my play style, but after combing through the masses, I only came up with 5. Hey, man, you should just be happy you got that. Some people don't get anything yet sometimes, man. You got 5 players, that's enough. One player, Bitsy, tells me that her own long-suffering GM friend was looking for a game to join and the schedules lined up perfectly. Now, I usually have apprehension about running for other GMs. Often we get stuck in our own styles and trains of thought, and that makes transitioning back into the player's chair pretty difficult. Sometimes, I don't know if that's always a true staple, but I understand. But I trusted Bitsy and said I'd allow their friend in. Thus enters Spider, or Spider. Character creation is going fine for the most part, but every now and then Spider comes up asking if we're sure we want to be playing basic B5E. When conversions of the module existed for Pathfinder 2E, I told them politely but firmly we'd not be switching systems a week before game day. They then started interrogating everyone about their class choices, homebrew, and what their character's whole vibe was going to be. It was a touch annoying, but everyone just kind of bore with it, chalking it up to the social jitters of a new group paired with the perma GM's brain being locked on mechanics. They go on and on about optimization, DPR, and how certain features made the whole classes basically obsolete. Oh, if I want to have a fun, I have to take Great Weapon Master. Otherwise, how do I keep up? And you're really going to be a trickery cleric? Twilight is better if we're staying in 5e, etc., etc. I mean, trickery is pretty good too in certain situations and how you use it. I had a small talk with them about backing off of the other players, and they accept that they were being a bit much and promised to tone it back. This, as we will see, was a lie. The first few sessions show that they were not intent on leaving anything be. Paladin has high AC. How? Cleric has access to spells their domain gives. No cleric shouldn't have that. Oh, domain. Ugh. Oh, saying no, clerics shouldn't have that. Oh, domain. Ugh, fine. Barbarian wants to rush down enemies. No, that is not ideal. Stay here so we can get flanking. Always said in the most aggressive and snap tone. Always said like they were clearly the only ones seeing how things should be done, trying to coordinate the party like it's his own personal troop of video game drones. It is getting on most of our nerves, with even Bitsy apologizing to many of us in the GMs apologize or in the GMs uh, even Bitsy apologizing to many of us maybe it's saying in the GM's place, apologizing for her friends, saying they were never like that in games she played. It might have just been a little bit of a typo error there. Well, another typo. Inevitably, we decide it's him or the game. And we all gather up in VC and ping them, telling them to come in for a talk. We all calmly cite instances where Spider felt aggressive or pushy, and all the talks they steamrolled, the weird behaviors with NPCs who had attractive art, and the constant bitching about 5e as an inferior system. Ugh. I must stress we did not raise our voices. We let him speak in his defense and tried to approach it in a way that let us all carry on, but, well, it didn't go so great. When the last other player had put their stuff forward, Spider finally blew up. And I mean, he blew up. He started calling many of the women in the party slags, called me the British cigarette slur, and started a long-winded rant about how GMing style and the play styles of their players were, at best, juvenile. He was about to go off with the words, "This is why I don't let queers in my game," before I cut him off, and with a firm, polite goodbye, kicked him from the server. I don't even know why you did polite. Why are you still being polite to this guy? He has clearly thrown any kind of decorum out the window. He has burnt up that social contract, and at which point you can just let those expletives fly, my friend. Like, you know what, fine, do you. I can't say it's the wrong thing to do. You're probably better than me and Sam in that regard, but this dude would have 100% gotten at the very least, verbal knuckle sandwich to the face. Like, I would have given this mother effer some summer teeth. Let me tell you. Some are over here, some are over there, some are everywhere. You know what I'm saying? That's right. Either way, we checked in with each other to see if we were fine, listened to some music to cool off, and went off to go live our normal daily lives. When I got home, I found I didn't have access to my account. I had been hacked. I shot one of the players a message on TikTok. Look, I like the memes, okay? Don't judge me. Kinda a little bit. Asking if anything weird had happened, and turns out Spider had hacked not just into my account, but a few others too, and had nuked the servers we ran or helped to administrate in. Posting racist memes, weird furry hentai, deleting DMs, a whole fiasco. Well, we sent in reports about the guy and try to rebuild elsewhere with new accounts, and we checked in on our old accounts, and most of them had been deleted. A lot of us are still trying to rebuild what Spider's little tantrum had done. We're still around as a party, but the last week and some change of dealing with this has been a major drain. Bitsy got kicked from all the games and servers Spider ran and has been a proper wreck about all this. I don't have a neat and tidy resolution, as much as I wish it could be so easy. Until I get an update or I think of any other stories from my history and the hobby, that'll be all for now from me. Good days and good vibes to all of you. You really are just a capital gentleman, aren't you, OP? Honestly. Well, I tip my hat to you, not a fedora. What do you think about this story, Sam?
I mean, it's pathetic, as a lot of the stories we read are. It's people who just can't seem to deal with anyone else doing something different than them, or just, not agreeing with their every whim. What I what I love the most about it is just like how quickly the disagreeing with this this other DM turns into like, I'm gonna start throwing slurs at people. Um, which again, how did this player who knew this DM not realize that's the kind of person they were? Because people don't just do that out of nowhere. Contrary to popular belief, some people think like, oh well, they never did that before, and then all of a sudden they did. No, people like that do that. There's no, well, he's never done it before.
I would be very interested to hear from Bitsy about like playing in Spider's game. Is he a very hands-on type of GM where he's just like, hey, you guys have to play this, that, and the other. You guys have to do this. Is he railroady? Like I would just be I would also be very interested to hear, like, because she says he's not normally like this. So then it's like, okay. And I guess, to be fair, we do have instances where, and that's kind of the thing about this hobby too, right? Where you interact with somebody outside of D&D and tabletop RPGs, and they might behave in one way, but the moment you get in a D&D or a tabletop RPG game, all of a sudden they kind of change. Like they start showcasing some other things. Um, I find it strange though with this scenario because she's played in games with him. He is the GM. So then it is the question of like, okay, yeah, is maybe a lot of this frustration or problems or issues because he's, the one still technically overall in charge. So he has so much creative control over so much of the other aspects of the game, like everything else but the characters, that he doesn't really feel the need to have to be so overly controlling and dominating and douchey. Like, maybe it's not impossible. Again, I agree. I'm a bit skeptical that there weren't at least some signs or indicators. But either way, what I will say is obviously this guy freaking out about all of this and hacking their Discord accounts to then sabotage all of them like that. This dude really comes off to me as like a no life neckbeard of the utmost proportions. Like you really have nothing better to do than to hack the accounts of multiple random people who you played a few sessions of D&D with poorly and try to screw over that little thing for them because they booted you from a game. Really? Because they disagree with your play style and your whatever. Which admittedly your play style is shit, just objectively speaking. It's pretty fucking toxic and annoying. But at the end of the day, whatever. Find a group that jives with that or who you can steamroll over, maybe, This seemed like this, like you said, absolute fucking L, dude. Absolute huge freaking L tantrum. Just like for no freaking reason, dude. Just like, let's see some of the comments down below. Top voted one goes, man, that really sucks. How did he even get into so many accounts? The 2FA shouldn't allow a breach of such scale. Did you download something from him? And it could be good advice in the post to warn people how he hacked you so people can avoid it. I also assume he filed a report about it. OP responds, we have filed reports about this guy, and only download I can recall was some video meme he sent to the general chat once, but I might be forgetting something. I've unfortunately learned it doesn't take much for all your data to get grabbed online these days. I mean, that is the question too. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, like, how did he hack you? Like, yeah, like that, because that's not just something you can just do. You know what I mean? Like, one of the comments literally was like, I'll say it, OP is lying. Like, another comment does go like, it's not common to be hacked, so it is really weird that you and other members of the party were all hacked at the same time. I'm not saying you're lying, but it seems pretty suspicious. Whereas another comment kind of goes back, says, video hacking isn't unheard of, though, and isn't it as uncommon as you'd think. If this is true and only some people in their group use 2FA and OP isn't one of them, the number of people that can't be bothered is ridiculous, use it people, it would explain why some were hit while others weren't.
Yeah.
Hmm. I don't know. Like I said, it definitely doesn't seem like, yeah. Regardless of whether or not of the true legitimacy or realness of it, like I still am entitled to at least, or sorry, inclined to at least believe that the previous interaction happened. Maybe it's all made up. Either way, it is still a relatively interesting story and thing to think about and converse about. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments below. Let's move to the next one of the day. Go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, I have underscore another a story about underscore another underscore dimension. Joined one shot for newcomers. It quickly became a power fantasy for DM and the
For
DM
GM's
friend.
friend, yeah.
Yeah, the DM's friend, and left the two new players with a bad taste in their mouth. I took a lot of liberties on the title of that. Um, I've been running a campaign with a group of friends, and I missed the feeling of being a player character. I jumped at the first chance I saw a post about a one-shot hosted by a game shop downtown. That one-shot was advertised as newcomer friendly and to help people get into the game. When I signed up, I made it clear that I have played D&D for a few years now and will lend the DM a hand to help those new players enjoy the fun of D&D. Or so I thought. On the day of the game, I saw two other players who had only played Baldur's Gate 3 before and didn't even have their own dice. I did lend them mine, as I am a dice goblin. And the fourth player was running late. The room was amazing, decked out in decorations and expensive props, and I could see the excitement in their eyes. The party consisted of me, a Twilight cleric Warforge, who is quite naive and just wants to be helpful as he can, because I wanted to give the spotlight to the other two new players. The two new players were a Moon Circle Druid and a Lore Bard. All of us were level
Ooh.
7, but had no magic items. The game started out well enough. I role-played my part as a hopelessly naive and awkward cleric robot and tried to encourage the other two to role-play. But I can't speak for them. But from my perspective, they enjoyed it and even chimed in and did their role-play. The party met at a bar, got a quest for fetching some artifact in a nearby saloon ruin. And then that player came. I'm assuming this is the fourth player that was late. He introduced himself as an edgy, badass. I'm assuming they meant bounty hunter, blood hunter, wearing a shadowy cloak which magically hid his face. He explained that he was only there because of his minions' intel, and specifically saying that he follows no one's orders. He then basically threatened the whole party with a cursed glove that
That has a
had a
face?
face on it that talked to us. And the dude had to calm the glove down, or else the glove will destroy us or some shit. Instant red flag. Zero information was given about his build, but throughout the game, here is what we know. He was armed to the teeth with magic items that fit his build. He had a magical weapon that dealt tons of magic damage on a hit, and he chose the damage type. High AC, in the ballpark of 17 to 20. His quote cursed glove is a homebrew item that gave him +6 strength,
Wow.
an advantage on perception checks.
That
At one
doesn't make
point,
a
he
lot of
laughed to
sense.
say he had resistance to almost all types of damage. In asterisks, great.
Yeah.
After, quote, joining the party, he just looked at his phone while the three of us helped each other get through the dungeon's puzzles and traps. Because of my devotion to Saloon, while traveling, I used mending to fix any shrine or holy symbol I could find, and always tried to keep the temple intact during our fights. I got a spear, the symbol of Saloon's champion, and I was able to use the spear to open the final door to a treasure room. In there, we met a specter of a dead Saloon priest. I guess in that point it'd be a Selenite priest, who explains that the followers there have sealed the door to this treasure room to avoid uh
Sharon.
Sharans from stealing Saloon's artifact, and they all died there. Oh no. From the looks of it, she was the final boss of the one shot. But I just showed her the spear that is now imbued with moonlight and said that I'm the champion and we're here now. But she just kept saying I'm a liar and kept being hostile, even though the DM made it clear that the Spectre knew of the spear and knew that only the champion of Saloon could wield it,
Oh no.
revealing that the edgy badass guy was a Sharon. The bard quickly came in to try and persuade the Spectre to be on our side with a roll of a 35. Nice. The DM said that the Spectre was persuaded but got corrupted by the other spirits and still wanted to fight us. So now my cleric has to spend one action every turn just to talk to the Spectre so she won't attack us, while having a 50-50 chance that she can resist the other spirits or fail. If she fails 3 times, she attacks everyone else, which would be
If she
bad.
fails 3 times, she attacks, else she is with us.
Oh, wow. Which
Yeah,
meant that I
it's
can't
just
take
not
any
great there.
action and left the other two players to fend for themselves. The druid was trying to wild shape, but ended up just being a sandbag for the edgy blood hunter to ostensibly one shot each turn with like 35 plus damage per hit. The bomb I throw at him, equivalent to a fireball, by the way, did like 4 damage because of his quote resistance. It took like 4 or 5 rounds of us suffering before the Spectre finally listened and decided to be on our side. I had I'd come up with the idea to use calm emotions to give her advantage on wisdom saving throws, or else it would have been 100% fucked. The DM said that she struck the Blood Hunter down with a moonbeam so strong it left a hole in the ground, and the Blood Hunter was nowhere to be found. The DM hinted that the Blood Hunter may have teleported him away. The three of us were left speechless. When we finally had a chance to fight back, the DM did that. I tried to break the ice with some in-character quirky joke. In the end, the two newcomers just left the game with a bad taste in their mouth. The druid basically just sandbagged the whole fight, couldn't even attack once, and the bard didn't get to roleplay his character as a cunning fox with a silver tongue because whatever they said, the roll results didn't reflect any of it. Disclaimer: I just want to share an educational experience for DM and players that like to avoid in your games. I also read this subreddit. I also read the subreddit often to improve my game as a DM. And if the DM or that player sees this post, I would tell all of this to you in real life. Yeah. This person, obviously, English is not their first language. That's okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
Um, but yeah, we've read stories like this before where it's obvious that the DM has a friend and like they have this weird connection to make this story that's more about them than everyone else. And this is unfortunate because you just caught up two people who were passionate about a hobby who might not try it again for a while after something like this because this does not sound very fun.
Like, here's the thing. The most tragic of it all is that, like, this obviously, I would assume, probably was pretty heavily influenced or inspired by Baldur's Gate 3 and Shadowheart's whole quest and backstory and everything, which is perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. But, and another thing too being is like, I love the whole aspect of Saloon versus Shar, right? I mean, who doesn't? It's a super awesome, fun kind of dynamic between the two sisters, of night and moon, of darkness and everything. Excuse me, and their whole rivalry, you know. The issue, and here's the thing, right? Even having like a so-called player, especially if this is like a one shot, having a player come in as a plant, as a potential uh traitor isn't the worst thing ever either. But clearly the way that they did this and ran this was just really bad. Like it was clearly not in their favor, and it definitely does seem to have been far more of like a power fantasy trip, literally as OP titles the story. Like I think it's very appropriate, very accurate and apt, where it was just like, yo, this should have been for the players to actually overcome. Like you should have let them have a legitimate fight with like let them take out the traitor. Or I guess if you're planning on bringing the traitor back, for maybe another one shot or making this a maybe a more full campaign, at least let them deal some real damage to the guy. You know what I mean? Like let them fight him. And yeah, then Shar can probably just resurrect him or bring him back, or maybe last minute can teleport him away. But at least let the players get some of that frustration that they've been building up against this guy. Like he can be a douchebag, he can be kind of like whatever, but you gotta let them have that resolution, that release, instead of this just bullshit like cop out Deus Ex Machina crap with no kind of payout at all. Like this just seems, yeah, like really bad GMing overall. And unfortunately, the player in question who was the traitor also just sounds kind of like a dick. Like, I don't think he needed to be an asshole about all of this. He could have been a perfectly good player and had a character that was maybe like a plant, but he didn't have to be an asshole about it. So, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, you could do this in so many fun ways. Um, and they didn't. They just did this at the I think at the expense of two players that did not have the experience to deal with this. And it breaks my heart a bit because it's obvious that this other person came in to try to alleviate, because it can be hard to play with people who haven't played before. You know, every every turn in combat you have to stop and answer questions. Every time you ask someone to do something, they don't necessarily know what you're asking them. People aren't confident in their role playing, so stories can just kind of hang. but you literally have a whole other player there who's dedicated to trying to help smooth things along so everyone can have a good time, including the people running it. It's not that's it's like it's for everyone in that sense. And you waste it by being a basic kind of a cunt, I'll be honest. Um a really shitty kind of introduction to what could be a long-lasting and fun hobby for people. And that's what bothers me more than anything else is when people take something that, we both hold very dear and they just kind of shit on it and make it
Oh,
about
they
them
yeah,
and
they pervert it, they abuse it, they just
this is far
they
from the
ruin it
crazy
for
shit we've
people.
read where it's like, people were being assaulted, whether it was verbally or mentally or physically, or it's nothing that horrible, but
No.
it's really disappointing and
Yeah.
sad that people can just eh, knowingly act like that and just
Yeah.
kind of rain on someone else's experience that heavily. And it
Agreed.
makes me really sad. Hopefully, that little bright light of you trying to be there, OP working with these two newer players and trying to encourage them, hopefully that sticks, even if this session didn't go fantastically for them. Hopefully, your efforts made a difference in some way in their mind. I'm sure. From what I've experienced, I'm sure they did in some way. Um, but hopefully, hopefully that's the case because it sucks. And I'm sure it also feels bad from your perspective where you're like, I tried.
Yeah. And none of
I
my
tried.
efforts were acknowledged or fruitful just due to some bullshit, basically collusion. It was legitimately just kind of collusion.
Yeah.
Um, and that's never a good feeling. That is always some of the shittiest ones for certain. Um, but yeah, anything else you got to say about this one, buddy? I
No,
see this one only has like 2 comments.
oh yeah, it's definitely
Um,
a lot of people haven't read that one yet.
yeah, where it's just
Probably
like
because it's a bit hard to read.
yeah, yeah, it is. But also, like,
But
what the commenter goes like, oh, good lord, that's a GM failure of epic proportions, taking a rolled crit 20 success away from the player arbitrarily to drag out the conflict. Yikes. Wait, was the edgy badass boss bounty blood hunter dude played by an actual player, or was it supposed to be a player playing a GM NPC disguised as a PC? It's still BS if the so-called boss gets multiple magic items and the group doesn't, and the boss NPC can only be defeated by another NPC. Wow. Starting newbie players on level 7 characters, especially when they're spellcasters as well, can only serve to confuse them. What is wrong with a nice level 1 or 2 intro adventure? Well, if it's for new players, level 1 or 2 probably isn't too bad, but either way, I do agree. OP does respond to this, however, and says, yeah, he's the 4th player who was running late. He just sat down and looked at his phone. Now that I think about it, he may have been messaging the GM. When he came in showing off his arsenal, the 2 newcomers were like, what? Well, why does he have such items out of nowhere? And the GM explained that he plays there every week. I just briefly said to them, and it's normal to have spoils from previous ventures, but normally a +1 weapon or the equivalent. I don't think it's a case of GM NPC ruining the game. And to be clear, the GM was nice the entire time and everything was all right until the 4th player came in. Well, just because of GM maybe was nice, they still dropped the ball heavily in terms of their job and their duty on how to make this work. Like, don't get me wrong. Here's the thing. I'm not even mad at, like, let's say, because again, I feel like a lot of this was heavily inspired and influenced by Baldur's Gate 3. And so having an enemy or having like the guardian, you convinced her successfully that she is your friend. Cool. Then she's not the one that's going to be fighting. Shar is going to come in and take control of her momentarily, right? And you have to find a way to maybe break the spell or stop her or whatever. Or even when you convinced her, right? Like have her join you to fight the late player, the 4th player, who is the clear boss, he's apparently an undercover Sharin. Okay, fight him then. If that was the plan, then do that. Don't have him be overpowered as F and then take away their NPC backup to be able to fight him more properly, right? Like what the hell are we doing? Like
yeah.
luckily the OP was smart enough and had enough ingenuity to give to give the guardian or whatever advantage on her saves so that she could succeed. But like, come on, GM. Yeah. You can't expect to have fun when literally the only thing the players are doing is constantly being on the defensive, where they're just like, oh, I'm gonna turn into wild shape. Oh, I lost my wild shape immediately from his ridiculous attacks. Oh, I'll do it again as an action. Oh, well, actually, technically, Moon Druid was a bonus action, so I don't really know why the Moon Druid wouldn't have been able to attack because they could have just bonus action transformed and then action attacked in their beast form. So I feel like they should have had more of that. But either way, again, we don't know all the full context or anything that was happening. Maybe they read the rules wrong and forgot that that as a Moon Druid, you can bonus action transform. Maybe they forgot about that because they're new players. Either way, especially with new players, this should have been ran so much better. It is not a great idea to make to do the whole implying of like, having a party member be a secret traitor for new players. That's never a good idea. That should not be an introductory campaign or module or one shot to new players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That starts to really imply a negative or incorrect kind of dynamic. It's not great. Um,
No, not at all.
but other than that, I think that's about all that we have got for y'all today. If you guys have stuck with us this long, as always, thank you so very much. We love and appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I think we certainly did. These were
Oh
definitely, I
yeah.
think, very intuitive and very, or not intuitive, excuse me. These were very indicative of, a lot of interesting psychological kind of countenance and aspects, right? Where you look at these people and how they behave, how they act. Some of them were the OPs themselves were kind of questionable at times. Other times, it was clearly kind of just like, the problem person in question was just way out of line in almost every aspect of the way. But either way, it's people are an interesting breed. Humans in general are always just so interesting on how they process and respond and handle all kinds of different situations and stimulus. And it's just always particularly fun and fascinating for us to, read through these stories with you guys and obviously have our spines powdered in the meantime from all the horrendous cringe, but also, to think about and to utilize these same cautionary tales to maybe help ourselves grow and get better, right? One of the OPs literally that we read about says they read through these particular Reddits in order to improve their own capacity as a GM and a player, right? And that is 100% what this whole series is about. Is
Oh
you read
yeah.
about these stories, and we want to use them to as cautionary tales to improve ourselves so that we can both recognize these traits in others and also in ourselves, and therefore take necessary steps and precautions to minimize more situations and damages like this. So, as always, thank you guys so much. Be sure to like and comment, subscribe, and share the channel down below. Hit that notification bell, and we'll be sure to see y'all next time when we dive back down into the archive. So long, y'all.
Yeah.